Why hello there, welcome to reading some more Reddit stories with Mick. For those who have not met me, my name is Jack. You may recognize me as a voice from MK. Well, this is my channel, and today is all about finding out who is the a-hole. If you do enjoy today's content, please like the video to help the channel out, and if you'd like to see more various stories from yours truly, be sure to subscribe as well. So why don't you do yourself a favor and sit back, relax, grab your favorite cup of tea and that Spotify background music playlist, and let's get started with the stories.
Today's first parter story is from user Maybe Mill. Am I the a-hole for refusing to support my son's pregnant girlfriend until she takes a paternity test? My son, 24 male, and his girlfriend, 24 female, have only been together for 6 months, and she is apparently 4 months pregnant with his baby. They have actually been friends since high school, and so my husband and I have known her for a few years as well. She is a lovely girl, but honestly, she is not someone I had hoped would be the mother to my first grandchild. First of all, she is a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, and while she says she has been clean for 3 years, a relapse is always possible. She only finished high school with her GED, and she now works as a waitress full-time. Her parents died years ago, so she is largely on her own. Our family is considerably better off, and my son is joining his father's business, meaning his salary will be quite high and will only continue to grow. Since my son first told us she is pregnant, it can't escape my mind that he may not really be the father, and that she picked him out of potential others because he would be the best in terms of support. My son is pushing us to help her with some of her pregnancy expenses, and I told him we would under the condition that she get a paternity test first. He completely blew up at that, accusing us of disliking her, untrue, and not wanting to be grandparents, also untrue. He says he loves her and trusts her and that he can't wait to meet his baby. I get that, but I think he's being idealistic. If he wants our support, we want a paternity test first. If the baby is truly his, then we would be happy to welcome her into our family and we would be happy to help her out. Am I the a-hole? Edit. There are 7,000 replies to this post and over 200 private messages in my inbox that I can't reply to. It's a pretty even mix of you're the a-hole and not the a-hole, so clearly the only thing everyone can agree with is that it's complicated. I've gotten messages to kill myself, I've gotten messages to call my son an idiot, and I have gotten messages from the Men Go Their Own Way subreddit telling me that the girlfriend is clearly a lying sociopath. I have also gotten a lot of messages from men who found out their child wasn't theirs after several years, who wish they had found out sooner. It's a lot to read, and a lot to think about. Many people have called out my attitude towards this girl, and I'll be honest, it is making me think. Yeah, look, you're valid to be suspicious, but also understand your suspicion, at least from what you're telling us, is only coming across from assumptions that you've had from previous people. I think you need to give yourself a bit more evidence to really prove that she is someone who can't be trusted. And I understand you are defending yourself as to your son's comments that you dislike her and that it's untrue, but from what you've described as her, it clearly comes across that you don't exactly like her. Maybe her personality's fine, but just her circumstances you're not approving of. But I don't want to dissect this too much because there is an update to this story, as this tale is about 7 months old now. So let us see this dramatic conclusion. Updated story. I received a message asking for an update, so here we go. After my original Reddit post, I talked to my son and asked him what kind of financial help he had in mind. According to him, since she does not have insurance, many of her medical costs were adding up, and he wanted to help her with those. A lot of people asked me why my adult son was reliant on us, but to us, that is not unusual. He is a recent graduate, and while he will be making a decent salary soon, he has just entered the workforce and does not have much in the way of savings. Plus, our family has always believed in helping each other out. If my daughter was pregnant, we would no doubt help her. I expressed my desire for the paternity test for his benefit, but he would not budge on that. I tried to warn him of the countless stories of fathers duped into parenting children that weren't his, but he was certain. A couple weeks later, his girlfriend actually reached out to me herself. We met up, and she told me she was embarrassed he had asked for financial help on her behalf, as she did not want to take any assistance. This surprised me, as I assumed she was the one that was pushing for the money. She was uncomfortable with the paternity test idea, but said she would look into it if it bridged the peace between me and my son. With COVID, the paternity test never ended up happening. It just wasn't a priority. Over the past few months, I have been talking with them more and more, and my husband and I bought them a substantial gift for their new home as a gesture of apology and goodwill. We did offer financial help, but my son refused it. By the time the baby was born, I had gotten to know his girlfriend better and was warming up to her joining our family. She truly is a delightful young woman, more so than I gave her credit for. The baby was born 7 weeks ago. It's a boy, and my son is absolutely thrilled. I have not gotten to meet him yet, but I have gotten to see him over video chat and in photos. He looks like my son. It's not an exact resemblance, but I can see my son in this little boy's face. Enough that paternity doubts are firmly in the back of my mind. Truthfully, I have fallen in love with this little boy, and watching my son grow into becoming a father has been the proudest thing in my life. If I had missed this, I would have never forgiven myself. And it seems everyone's happy to hear this. I'm so glad you've been able to look past your misgivings and give your son's girlfriend the chance she deserves. I hope your mind stays open and that love finds you and yours in all its forms. What made you think she was lying? And for God's sake, don't listen to men go their own way. They are all bitter men who think all women are leeches because of a few bad apples. Same for men being lied to about the child being theirs. From the original post, the suspicions were due to the income or wealth disparities in the families and their girlfriend's history of substance abuse. Or maybe grandma just read too many Am I the A-holes. I do appreciate Bulky Muffin kind of clarifying puzzle-headed Finish's assumptions about men go their own way. Yes, men go their own way is wrong about a lot of their conclusions, but they talk about very real problems that plague men, and are shoved into their corner because if anyone talks bad about women, they are immediately looked at with suspicion. That doesn't excuse how they treat and think about women, but to just jump to men go their own way is such a weird direction for you to go in. OP is a woman for Christ's sakes, and plenty of women do trick men into raising non-biological kids, and when men find out that the kid isn't theirs, they are still stuck with paying, and nothing happens to the woman. Yeah, one thing we need to understand when it comes to any groups online, or even just out there in the world in general, most of the time they're in that group because they're escaping some sort of pain, or fear, and finding solace and comfort in these online groups that they'll then project their fear and discomfort of things onto what ends up becoming a huge vacuum and echo chamber, therefore making them think and believe that what they're upset about is something that is genuinely a big thing to deal with. Men Go Their Own Way is a great example of this, to the point now where if someone says, hey, I don't like that women get away with this sort of thing on men, you apparently also think that all women should be slaves and stay at home all the time. Or if you think women should be hired more so on their potential as well as their ability, you apparently also agree to the fact that all men must die. I don't know, it's just fascinating how much we like to radicalize the most simplest and basic of thought. Our next story is from WeebleWobble222. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that her daughter can't expect people to look out for her triggers? I, male 32, had a small family dinner at my house last night with my parents, 2 siblings, and their children. My wife loves to cook, and since it was the first time we've seen family in months, she made a huge spread of food. My sister has 2 daughters, and her eldest daughter, 13, has an eating disorder. She's visibly very thin. She always has been a pretty thin kid, but it wasn't until this last year that she's gotten considerably thinner. At dinner, my wife brought out all of the dishes of food, including one of my favorite dishes she makes. I was sat next to my niece and my wife passed me a dish, so naturally, I passed it on to my niece and I said something like, "This is my absolute favorite, you're gonna love it," or something to that effect. Well, later on, my sister scolded me for apparently embarrassing my niece and pushing food onto her. She told me my comment was triggering because of her eating disorder and for me to hand off a bunch of food to her in front of everyone upset her. I told my sister that if me saying a light-hearted comment like that and passing her a dish so that she can choose to pass it on is triggering, she can't expect people to know that and look out for her triggers. She has to do that herself. My sister thinks I was being insensitive, especially because she's only 13, and that I'm an a-hole for not being extra sensitive because it's obvious that she has an eating disorder. Am I the a-hole? Obviously, this is just coming from your side of things, so it's hard to tell how you were perceived when you were commenting like that. I know a lot of people who can be rather enthusiastic when they recommend things can seem like as if you're a bit afraid to say no to them because of just how passionate they are about suggesting this thing. But let's see what people say in the comments. Not the a-hole. It's not always easy to tell what is going on to set someone off, but it's the other person's responsibility to respond to their triggers, not the responsibility of those around them. And with something like this, it was a very casual comment. Also, I think it would be a-hole behavior to assume she has an eating disorder just because she's thin. Not the a-hole. Eating disorders is hard, and she needs to help her daughter find tools for responding to her triggers instead of trying to shelter her. Agreed. I mean, if you were going on and on about your new diet in front of her, I think most courteous people would see that could be triggering and avoid it. But just offering her food isn't going to be a triggering behavior for everyone with an eating disorder. It would be one thing if she pulled you aside afterwards and said, Hey, that comment made her uncomfortable. I know it seems like nothing to you, but could you maybe try and avoid offering her food from now on, and letting her decide what she wants to eat? But going straight into scolding doesn't help anyone, unless you've had a history of ignoring known triggers. Yeah, I definitely agree with that last point there. You were clearly unaware of what you did or were doing even at that time. For her to be reprimanding you as if you were intentionally bullying her child? No. You're not the a-hole, and I definitely agree with the idea that this girl needs to try and develop a way of properly controlling or at least reacting to these triggers in a healthy way. Of course, at the age of 13, that's not exactly something she should be expected to deal with herself. Her mother should be helping her out with this instead of, well, sheltering her, as it seems to come across. Next story by Secretary Senior 1537. Am I the a-hole if I tell my dad to get out for showing me a semi-nude pic of a woman he's talking to? So basically, my mum cheated on my dad with a work colleague. Dad found out, and now they aren't together anymore. I don't really miss my mum much since we were never really close to begin with, and staying with my dad is awkward because I'm not close with him either, especially since he spent most of my childhood traveling for business and there's barely any bond apart from the usual political talk and us being atheist. Honestly, I wouldn't mind staying with him despite the little awkwardness at time if my older brother was around, but he messed up and now he's with my mum. He is also really bad at parenting my younger brothers, leaving the parenting to me. With me parenting my little brothers, I've come to know that I don't want kids at all, and I want to be selfish and not have to get up and cook every day, or have to make sure the little ones take their bath, or have to break up fights, or making sure they have memorable childhood. Yeah, I want to focus on me alone and wake up whenever I want without someone relying on me. Yeah, preach it, brother. Who am I kidding? I'm only 26, I'll probably want kids one day, unfortunately. Anyways, why I am is because I've been the one listening to my dad's woes about the whole situation with my mum, both the good, the bad, and the traumatizing part. I never complained because I felt I was at fault for their separation, with me spilling the beans on some matters. I never put up a boundary on what he can and cannot talk to me about, and so the showing of the woman's semi-nude pic started. It feels worse, especially since I'm a girl. Anytime he wants to show me, I turn my face away and make it clear that I don't want to see them, but he takes it as me being jealous? For my mum. I honestly want to confront him on how disgusting and uncomfortable he's making me, but I can't since I will bring up some bad memories I'd rather forget, and I don't want to be rude about it since where I live, elders are always considered to always be right. Am I the a-hole if I confront him on it even if it makes things weird between us? No, you are not the a-hole at all. You were uncomfortable in this situation, you have made it clear, and he's just ignored it as just a laughable joke. Well, maybe not laughable, but he's clearly not taking it seriously. And look, if it does insult your culture in some way, I do apologize, but the idea that your elders are always right? Well then, okay, why did your mother start cheating on her partner? What, was she doing the right thing? Is your father right to be showing you semi-nude photos of women? Sorry, I think that's so wrong. Maybe there are many elders you know about that are actually quite intelligent and wise, and you can, actually listen to them and respect their opinion on things, but your parents clearly have not made the right decisions here. However, I will understand the fact that they're going through a separation-divorce scenario right now. And considering you have multiple siblings, this is clearly an event that would have really shook them both. Maybe your father more so. This could be also him, albeit pathetically, attempting to bond with you in a way. He likely feels that your younger brothers are a bit too young to expose this stuff with and share it with, so he'll go to the next best person, which is you. So if you do approach him about it, maybe bring that up. Maybe ask him about that. Is he doing this because he just wants to kind of bond with you about something? And if that is the case, then you can find something else to bond about instead. Of course, the confrontation may require some bad memories to come up, and look, I feel like that may just have to happen in order for you to properly repair this relationship. If anything, letting all this stuff off your chest could actually be for the better. Next story from user ThrowDad. Wow, people really love throwing things in this subreddit. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife's friends she is too old and ugly after she repeatedly asked my 19-year-old son to take off his shirt? He was getting uncomfortable. Oh boy, an older person perving on a younger kid. That's gonna be fun. My family had a small get-together at my house. One of my wife's friends was over. She is unmarried. I think she is 45 to 47. We aren't too close to her since she lives pretty far away. She was over our house and she started complimenting my son. My son is 19. It starts off innocent, but as time goes on, it gets more and more crossing the line. When we were out on my deck, she starts telling my son to take his shirt off. What's the point of going to the gym if no one will see it? My son is visibly uncomfortable and tries to shut her down. She repeatedly is asking and is getting more aggressive with it. I interject and I am like, hey, Kathy, I think you're a bit too old and ugly for my son. This got her upset really quickly, and she excuses herself to the bathroom and starts crying. My wife goes to comfort her, and then later she leaves. At the end of it, my wife is super angry with me for saying that I should have said, "Hey, Kathy, looks like you had too much to drink or something else." I told my wife that Kathy, by the way, this is not her real name, works a corporate job. She has had training on this, and she knows better. And our son was uncomfortable. He is 18 plus, but he doesn't know how to deal with an adult, let alone someone saying that in our house. I told my wife flat out that if I was to invite a guy friend and he was to ask to see our daughter in a bikini, my wife would have called the police. She says it's different. I tell her that I was way kinder to Kathy than I would have been had a guy said something like that to our daughter, and I told my wife that Kathy needs to apologize to my son before she can ever come into our house again. Overall, I think it was fair. If Kathy just said it once and I said that, I think I would be an a-hole. But the fact she kept repeating it that's why I said it. And I wanted her to get the message that yes, I am upset, and that's why I included the ugly part. Not the a-hole. Double standard, no more. I wouldn't let her around my boy anymore. I would be livid if a husband's friend was telling my daughter the same type of things. And why is insulting her looks and age the appropriate thing instead of telling her off for sexual harassment and kicking her out? No one is interested in being nice to a pervert. But by saying that, the behavior is unwelcome because of her age and perceived attractiveness. Her behavior isn't being described as perverted, but instead as simply out of her league. It's explicitly saying that if she were younger and hotter, it would be fine. It's explicitly saying that either the son is only uncomfortable because she's not hot enough, or that the son's discomfort wouldn't matter if she were hotter. South Park nice. And all that. Far better to call out her behavior as is rather than resorting to ad hominems or justifications. Kathy, stop sexually harassing my son, or leave. Same response as if she were a 19-year-old supermodel that the son simply wasn't into. Exactly! Like, if she were in her late 30s and gorgeous, it would be okay? No, it wouldn't be. Saying, Kathy, it isn't appropriate, plus sexual harassment to speak to my son this way, would get the actual point across. Not gonna lie, my first reaction was, yeah, he's completely in the right to have said this to her. But yes, I do have to agree with what these people have made a point of. You didn't exactly point out her behavior, you just called her ugly and insulted her looks. You didn't exactly point out what she was doing wrong to her, you just made her feel bad about herself. And considering you pointed out that she's in her mid-40s and unmarried, as a woman I can imagine that's kind of a harsh thing to be confronted with all the time. In fact, I think if you tell anyone at that age that they are undesirable in some way, even as a joke, it's gonna hit them a little hard. Regardless, your intentions to protect your child were absolutely justified. And the fact your wife tried to dismiss what was happening to your son, that's concerning. Next story by Am I the a-hole for cutting my daughter off because she went over on her utility bill? My, 48 female, daughter is 25 and a recent single mum of a 7-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. Her late husband, 24 at time of death, was trying to start a business and left her and her son with a lot of debt that he didn't tell her about. I admit that he probably expected sunnier days financially speaking soon, but at the same time, I never liked the boy. I felt like he was too soft at everything he did. My daughter is left with a lot of debt. They were sending their kid to a private special needs school and she begs that I cover the tuition for that, along with the utilities and gas for her apartment. At that moment, I've become shaky on my confidence in my daughter's decisions, so I made her a deal that she forwards me the utility bill for the next 3 months and that she cannot go over $200 a month. First 2 months go by okay, but this month I see that her bill comes out at about $215. She explicitly broke her side of the deal, so I told her that I will not be financially supporting her or her kids and that she needed to either securing more shifts at her hotel housekeeping job or attempt to get a loan. She starts calling me cold-hearted and says that it was because her son was on the computer doing learning games and now her son will have to be put in a public school where special education is weak. However, we had a deal, and I remind her that she could have continued working instead of hitching her horse to somebody who was barely making ends meet for their family. Am I the a-hole? My husband, 57 male, and my daughter's father cut contact with her after she got married, for a lot of complicated reasons, and says he supports my decision. He says he raised her to be self-sufficient and strong, and it's embarrassing to see her beg for money. Your daughter is 25, single, and with 2 kids. She works in housekeeping. You're refusing to help her out anymore because she went over by $15, and justified it reasonably because her child was trying to learn. And her husband died. Yet your husband, her father, has the audacity to go on about her being raised strong and sufficient, and it's embarrassing to see her beg for help. Like, what? You are clearly putting your pride above everything here. How ironic you as parents show some sort of disliking towards their legacy being treated as such, what with your daughter's choices in her partnership. And yet your decision to help out your grandchildren is to just let your daughter suffer, pretty much. Let's see what everyone else is saying. Don't forget the details that make this even worse and crueler. One of the kids is a special needs kid. It happened in the middle of a pandemic. The daughter is a hotel housekeeper, meaning that she probably had her hours severely reduced due to the lack of travel, so completely out of her control. Opie is advising her daughter to get a loan, which in her situation would be the predatory type, loan sharks, where she'll be in worse and worse debt every time with no ability to get out of it. It's embarrassing to see your recently widowed daughter, mother of 2 young children, struggling for money. What the frick is wrong with you? So yeah, pretty clear that everyone's quite unanimous in thinking you're the a-hole in this situation. Our next story comes from another throwaway. What I love about the throwaways is usually that means they're going to be an a-hole. Am I the a-hole for refusing to make my son pay for the bras he damaged in full because I think they're too expensive? My stepdaughter, 25 female, is staying with my, 40 male, wife, 44 female, and I temporarily. My son, 15 male, stays with us every other week. He has online classes while the rest of us have to go to work, so he's alone at home for a good while. Last week, he decided to make a video and use my stepdaughter's bras as props. He dyed them, cut them, and used them as slingshots, etc. She was extremely upset and said that they were practically unusable afterwards. Apparently, she also uses high-end bras that cost $85 to $90 a piece. I can't wrap my head around that price tag. I know my wife doesn't spend more than $50 on a bra. However, he destroyed 5 bras, so that's about $450. I don't think that's a reasonable price to pay for just 5 bras. My son had $200 saved up and offered that, but she was still upset. My wife sided with her. I don't think making a 15-year-old who clearly can't afford $450 pay the whole thing is fair either. She can buy 5 cheaper bras for $200. Look, I understand, they're just underwear. You can just get the cheaper option. But when it comes to things like bras, even as a guy, I understand how necessary you need a good quality bra. It also depends on what kind of bras exactly he was destroying and tampering with. Were they personal lingerie? Were they sports bras? Were they general bras that are designed specifically for support? Because if they're the specific support bras, then yeah, those things are pretty expensive. After all, you have to consider the fact they're pretty much walking around with weights on their chest all day. And it requires some pretty nifty materials to make a bra that's designed to hold that thing up without wearing and tearing out after time. So as a result, that's going to cost a bit of money. But let's see what the comments say. You're the a-hole. Yeah, it's probably not reasonable for your son to pay $500, which is why you, as the parent responsible for your son's behavior, need to pay whatever he's unable to. Very, very odd you think you know what's best for your stepdaughter's breasts. Imagine if you owned a sports car and someone trashed it as a joke, then offered to buy you a Camry because you don't need a sports car. Good point. Don't think it's necessary to accuse the dad of being some creepy pervert here by assuming he knows what's better for her breasts. I mean, he's merely just pointing out the cost. He's not talking about the actual knowledge he has that's more than hers regarding her chesticles. Let's not make this a creepy stepdad thing. Literally came here to make the sports car analogy. Sorry about the Ferrari, but I can't see why anyone would spend $350,000 on a car. Here is a Toyota instead. You're the a-hole. Your son can pay the $200 to learn his lesson, and you can pay the missing $300 to learn yours. How bad are you as a parent that your 15-year-old son thinks it's okay to destroy other people's property for fun? Now, I don't think for parents this is an accurate remark to make towards them. Especially when it comes to being a teenager, most kids are being quite adventurous or rebellious in nature. And in many cases, trying to restrict a child's freedom and exploring those avenues of rebelliousness can merely make them more enticed to do it and do it in much more dangerous ways. Of course, I'm also referring to drinking and drugs and all that kind of stuff, and that the best method for those things is to really teach a child how to keep themselves as safe as possible in those scenarios, and if they do come across those situations where they are, engaging with that stuff, they should speak to you immediately as open and honestly as possible, and you shouldn't reprimand them for it unless they're doing it repeatedly. Destroying bras, however, is definitely not as dangerous as drugs and alcohol. However, I would say the bad parenting comes from how the father reacted to the situation rather than the kid doing it in the first place.
Well, hey, look at you making it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you're here right now watching my face, that means you enjoyed yourself, so the least I ask is you like this video. Help out my channel. While we're here, I'd like to thank everyone who has already subscribed to me. It honestly means a lot that you want to support me in this journey we're on together. I love making this content. It's an absolute blast to do it and talk to you guys and get your opinions on things as well. So, if you'd like to be a part of the family, why not subscribe yourself? Click that notification bell too so you can always be updated on the latest videos. I try to upload on the daily for us here. Again, you should totally like this video. It was a pretty good video. Of course, with all that said, it is my time to leave. So, farewell. You are an amazing person. My name is Jack. Again, wonderful talking to you today. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye!